Welcome to Bootstrapped Unicorns. I'm your host, Josh Pies, the chief attention getter and hippie capitalist at C47 Digital Studios. This show is an exploration of entrepreneurship because it's important to hear people's inspirational stories of where they were and where they're going and how they've gotten to where they are. But even more important is to glean all those tactical, actionable data points that we can use on our own journeys as we grow our businesses, and we can say, yes, we bootstrapped to become a unicorn.
Hooray for Hollywood! It is Bootstrapped Unicorns. I'm Josh. Hasn't changed, by the way. Still the same guy. And we are going to be talking about something that everybody wants to know more about, which is movies. So I have the privilege of having a good friend on the show who is, he's an attorney. Who wants to talk to an attorney? Well, an entertainment lawyer is so much more interesting. And we've produced movies together and we do all sorts of fun stuff. And I say we separately and together, there's a lot to talk about. So today on the episode, what I want you to be listening for is, one, is just the Hollywood conversation is always interesting, right? So just enjoy. Two, getting into a new industry is a story and it's a challenge. And we both have our origin stories. We'll dig into Neal's today. And yes, this is Neal Sampat sitting next to me. And so we will dig into that. But also, maybe there's something in your business. Maybe it's completely unrelated to the Hollywood story, but it could be a tidbit of how we think about our industry and how we approach business and relationships that you can apply in your business. So don't turn off your "this is for my business" hat. You enjoy everything you're going to hear today, but remember, you're watching this because you're supposed to be growing as an entrepreneur and as somebody who cares about an entrepreneur that you know and love. So keep those ears on as we go deep. Neal, I am honored to have you all the way in from Philly. What's up?
How you doing? I'm privileged to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I'm doing great. You know, nobody actually ever asked me that when I'm on the show. Yes, I'm doing well. I'm very happy. Thank you. We just had a great meal over at Hillstone. Good burgers. Right. We're ready to rock. So I want to start, we dug deep on kind of your origin story a little bit here, but I want to start from the NFL.
Okay.
Most people don't know that you were an agent for NFL players.
Correct.
That's an interesting world. And now you're here in entertainment law and producing and all this stuff. How do you end up an NFL agent and why aren't you still doing that?
Well, good question. It's a long backstory, but I wanted to be an NFL agent when I started watching the show Arliss on HBO. I thought it was fantastic, and at the time, I didn't know it was not reality. I thought that's the agent life,
right?
And
yeah,
I was like, it was excellent writing. Then, as I dug in, I learned to be an agent, you just need a postgraduate degree. So
who says that rule? Why is that
the NFL? The NFL has that rule to be an agent. You just need a postgraduate degree. It doesn't say what in what, but it has to be not just undergraduate, any postgraduate degree. So it could be business. Majority of them are law, from what I learned. So I said, okay, if I want to be a good agent, I need to be a good lawyer. I went to engineering school, electrical engineering.
That tracks perfectly.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. It was more of a fallback in case I can't make it as a lawyer. I don't get an opportunity. I still have something I can do and I love.
Did you like the engineering thing?
I loved it. I worked for the Navy for 4 years on submarines. So I was in charge of basically, maybe I can say now, but their spy equipment. I upgraded all their spy equipment, communications equipment. Sole purpose of a submarine is spying.
Now that you've listened to this episode, we will have to kill you.
Right. Okay. It's all classified. So, so I did that. But the law school itch was there. Okay. It was always there. It was just more of, when do I do it? When's the right time? After 4 years, I got married, and it was basically, if I'm changing my life that way, let me change my life. And my wife was very, very supportive. Maybe one of the main reasons. She pushed me. She said, go to law school. If that's what you want to do it. I went to law school, came out in 2007 during the recession. Mm-hmm. Nobody was hiring. Nobody was doing anything. So I thought, let me start my own firm. In 6-7 months, when the recession's done, people will see that, look, at least he was ambitious. He did his own firm. And here I am today, still with my own firm. It never changed because one client became two became four became 8. So it grew. I had
and there was general practice.
General practice. So I like to focus on contracts and entertainment law and things like that. But we did immigration, we did family law, we did buying of businesses. We did civil litigation, name it. We were doing it as a firm. But the itch was there still. I was like, no, this is still not satisfying what I want to do. So I moved to Los Angeles to just see what else is out there, especially in the entertainment world.
Yeah.
And while I was out there, studying for the bar exam, and one day my wife said, "Do you really need this?" And that was like the epiphany. Like, no, I don't. I don't need the bar exam. I don't need to be a licensed attorney because I already am one in Pennsylvania, New Jersey.
Got it. So you proved that you can pass.
I did
right?
it. Yeah. So this is about 8 years after I've already passed the bar running the firm. And I said, yeah, if I'm in California, it wasn't to work in a law office and room. It was to get into this entertainment world. And the epiphany, that was the light bulb moment. And I started pursuing other avenues. And then, while I'm doing that, I said, well, this itch of being an agent never really went away. And I thought if I'm going to do it, let me try it now.
Yeah.
So I did.
Is there a lot of NFL activity in Los Angeles? I wouldn't have connected that for myself.
No, it doesn't really matter. It's just where I was based. It could be. Okay. Agents are all over. It's just a matter of where you recruit the players. The players can be from the big schools. And it's an exam, so I had to spend about 5-6 months studying for this exam. In some ways, it was harder than the bar exam, because it's more strict in the percentage you need to pass. I think it's 60 questions. You have to get 54 right.
Wow. Okay, that's a high percentage.
Yeah, so it's not that everyone can do it. Even if you have that postgraduate degree, doesn't mean you automatically become an agent. You still have to study for this exam. And I did, and I passed. So I became an agent, and the reason it stopped was a pandemic, to be honest. Schools weren't allowing spectators or agents to come see practices, or they were not allowed to come see the games back then. So it just made it very, very tough for new agents to persevere because they don't have the reputation. Now, older agents who've been there for 20 years can call a team and say, have a good player, and they have some kind of reputation that, if he thinks it's good, we'll take a look at him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If I say, hey, they're good, they're like, who are you? You've been an agent for 1 or 2 years. So it was one of those things that, cross it off my checklist. I was happy I did it, and I was happy I left when I did, because I realized while that was like a childhood dream of mine, I fulfilled it, but I wanted different things as I got older.
And of course, I know some of the story, but so now you're growing up as an adult, and
still growing,
aren't we all? Right?
Yeah, trying to at least.
And some of that's overrated. I've
found.
But so you ended up bridging into the entertainment side of this. Where did that start crossing over for you?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be in film and television. I just didn't know what
drew you.
I don't know. When I was little, I would make home movies.
Really?
Yeah. So just either, at parties or, hey, I just want to film this little thing that I didn't study for a test and what happens. It's like 2-minute movies, but it was just something there. But then, life takes over and I have other activities. So it was never, I felt like I pursued that. And, that was more directorial. And I know now I don't necessarily want to be a director, but I knew film and TV just drew me, but I didn't know what. And then especially later when I became an engineer, I was like, okay, what's that going to do with the film and TV? But it's one of those things that, this is my life, but there's that itch. It's just still there. Something in the back of my head said, okay, you're not doing what you want to do yet. Then I thought, okay, law school. It was like, great, law school is where you want to go. That satisfied the engineering itch. Then I was in law school. It came out. It was more of, okay, you're still not doing what you want to do. But I didn't know what it was. It was just the voice saying, you're not there yet.
Okay.
So then after my practice, I moved to Los Angeles. And even before that, I was doing talent management. I was doing contracts for entertainment personalities and a lot of paperwork.
Yeah. There was a lot of music back then too, right?
I was doing more music. Music wasn't what I really wanted to do, but it came in front of me, and I'm not going to say no.
Well, it's wonderfully tangential, like close tangential.
Correct. Right. It's not completely foreign world.
Yeah.
But it's different. Music contract and a film contract is completely different, but they're still contracts.
Sure.
So that's still my wheelhouse. It was just more of the love. It was a film and TV for me. So I went to Los Angeles and I said, let me see what I can do in this world. And luckily I got opportunities to get into it. The quick story is I was at lunch and a girl next to me, maybe a woman, I should say a woman, she was a director, moved to New Jersey and went back to LA for going to school to be a director. And one of the best things she told me is that you won't know what you want to do till you see it, till you're in it, and it'll hit you. And I mean, I listened to her, but I didn't know what that meant at the time. And then I saw what a producer does, and she was completely right. You know, it hit me, and I'm like, this is it. This is going to satisfy what I'm looking for. So the next day, she invited me to be co-producer on her short. And, you know, I was more like, you sure you want me? Like, I've never done it. Right. I don't know anything about it. I'm a lawyer just trying to find my way. You know, and her name is Nicole Serrato. I'll always give credit to her because she gave me my first break. She said, no, I know who you are. I know what you can do. Because a lot of my engineering courses and work was project management. Right. So she said, this is just a lot of project management. You can do it. I believe you can do it. And I'll show you the things you don't know. I'll show you. But at least, you know, you have some skills that a typical person coming right out of school may not have because I have life experience working. Right. Couple of jobs, Navy, then my having my own practice. I know how to manage people. So it'll come in handy. And it was more like day one was like, this is where I need to be, you know? And she was completely right. Unfortunately, we did not get to finish that because that's when pandemic came too. Sure. So, you know,
a lot of projects fell apart because of that.
Correct. Yeah. So in one month of, you know, that March month, my legal stuff stopped, my NFL stopped, the movie stopped, and it was like, okay, all three things are on pause.
March 20th of 2020, I lost about $500,000 in booked work in 3 phone calls.
Correct. Right.
And I think everybody's got a story like that.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
The world fell apart and it was on us to put it back together again. So you were mentioning that you've discovered that the producing role is for you and that project management connects. Now, you and I live our lives as producers, and I know this, but our audience might not understand. What is a producer?
Depends what day you're asking, right? But a producer, this is what I tell people. I said the script writer or the writer of the script draws the blueprints of a building. Let's say you're building a building. The executive producer will fund that project, and the producer does everything to turn it from paper to reality, tangible. So just some of the duties would be finding locations. You know, sometimes there's a location manager, but the producer is still overseeing. But finding locations, then it's getting permits for those locations, then agreements with the actors, which actors you're going to pick. I know there's a casting agent, but still producers are involved in that.
Well, and then of course the guilds.
The guilds, right? The paperwork required to satisfy all the guilds. Also the logistics of when are we shooting, what days, what's available, what's not available, who's not available. So it's the equivalent when you're building the building is, okay, the cement goes there, but we won't use that till Thursday, but the glass goes here. We need that. Or we need the first floor built before we can do the second floor. So it's just the project management of converting it from paper to reality.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're the general contractor.
General contractor, right. And then it's just, you know, you have the plan. And it doesn't go always to plan, rarely does, but it's about putting those fires or adapting to those plans. Yeah. You know, so that's a lot of it. It's rare where a producer will do nothing because it's rare for it to go perfectly to plan.
Yeah, I've never seen it happen, right? It's just, that's life. It's completely impossible for all of those ducks to be in a row and then stay in a row. Yeah. So I find it interesting because there's a lot of entertainment attorneys who do entertainment attorney law, right? And it's the paper pushing, it's the, yes, I will handle this. Here's your output. Thank you very much. Here's the bill. And then there's producers, but rarely do I meet people who are like you, where you're producing and you're an entertainment lawyer. How have you managed to merge all of that and into what you do now? Because, you know, in the spirit of Bootstrapped Unicorns, it's very unicorn-like. There's not too many of you.
Correct. Yeah. So what helps me is the project management experience and that I have and skills is hosting on the producer side.
Yeah.
Now, as a producer, producers always deal with production counsel, either to get the location agreement, get the releases, waivers, all the paperwork. Mm-hmm. Well, that's stuff I do and I have done before I became a producer. So to me, it's okay, I'll just do it. Or if I'm on a production team, they don't have to rely on someone else. As a production counsel, it's okay, this is what I've done before. So whether I do it from my office, which I was doing, or doing it on set, which is much more fun, that's how it blends. So that also what the advantage I think I would have is as a producer, I know potential issues that may come up.
Right.
And can we avoid them now that we don't even need my hat as production counsel to even get involved? If we can avoid this, sidestep this. As production counsel, I also know what helps me is this is how it should be done by the letter of the law or by procedure. But I also know there's reality. Okay, we can, if we need to shortcut it, this is a way we can kind of get around it and not be in trouble because I've had that producer hat. So it doesn't get bogged down in either one. The producer hat doesn't get bogged down and it catches up later with all the legal stuff that will come in if we don't consider it. And the legal side doesn't just say this is the only way it has to be. Because I also know the practical side of achieving the goal.
Well, and that's really important too, because I have dealt with enough attorneys to know that some of them are extremely black and white to the point where there's a lack of creativity.
Yeah.
And I hear you clearly. You're not saying here's the way to break the law.
Correct.
It's here's the way to exercise kind of the spirit of the law to do the right thing on all parties, but we can also solve this imminent problem.
Correct.
And that's unique. I really appreciate that. Now, also, my impression of your practice right now is that you find yourself kind of in an executive producer role often because, some of them are lower budgets. The higher budget ones are probably just paying you, your fees.
Right.
But it seems like you get involved in a lot of projects that become a little bit more personal. They're more aligned with the youthful passion.
Right. Absolutely.
Just like the one, I don't know if I can talk about it, so I won't talk about it, but he was literally showing me a deck today. Like, woo. But and you're in the trenches on that one.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's the love. It's the love. Like a funny story and for Dark My Light, when I was producing, Bobby was our AD. Love him. Absolutely. One of the best I've seen. But one of the days got on the mic and was like, can you bring the director coffee? And I did. And then it was like, can you bring the DP coffee? And I did, and it was like, hey, we're hazing you. All good fun. But to me, like, it wasn't hazing because I love it. I absolutely love it.
You were willing to be the production assistant.
I'll do the PA. So a couple of days we were short of PA. We needed one. I became the PA. To me, because it doesn't matter. Eventually, as a producer, you have to see it get done. And I wasn't the only one, but as a producer, hat on, if it doesn't get done, it falls back on you anyway. Yeah. So days I would help, crowd control this and that. I didn't see it as anything other than I'm on a movie set. Like, how great is this? That, its worst day is still great. For me. Now maybe, I don't know, 20 years in, it might change, but it may not either because to me, I just finished filming one in Atlanta. It was little things like pick up cups, this and that. It doesn't matter because it has to get done. So if I'm on set, it's where I want to be.
Well, that's actually a great environment. So I was on set for the last couple of days and the director there, his name was Jim, and Jim was running a very happy set.
Okay.
He was a very grateful guy. And that tone really spread through to the point where I was seeing some very well-heeled DPs they found a janitor closet and they had brooms. And I'm like, you're the DP, dude. That camera on your shoulder is worth more than a McLaren. Like, what are you doing? But at the same time, I knew exactly what he was doing because it was a very happy set and it was a warm environment. And you're setting a great tone, when you're a leader, but you can be a servant leader. I think that applies to any business and any atmosphere. If you're willing to do the low thing.
Right.
And show that it wasn't beneath you because it was a job that needs to be done. The tone is just brilliant.
Yeah, and I it's not just on set. I do that in my law firm too. I have the front receptionist to partners, and I tell them, I said, you don't work for me, you work with me.
Yes.
My door is open. If you have suggestions on how to make a process better or something we do better, absolutely come tell me, because I don't pretend to know I know everything. I just did this because when there was nobody with me, I was solo. This is how I did it. I don't know any other way. And it's not a I will succeed. It's a we will succeed. Because what I tell them is that nobody wants to go to work. We get that. But if you had to go to work, I want my law firm to be a place you enjoy going, as best as you can, because I want you to feel like it's also yours. It's not a my way or the highway. It's, hey, we're on it together. What can we all do to make it better, more efficient, more fun, whatever it is? We're a team. Now I may be the captain of the team because it's my firm and all that, but we're all a team.
Right.
But, and I feel like, treating, the lawyers all the way down to, I don't even say down, but even the receptionist, the same in that they all have equal say. Now, sometimes I can't implement what they want, but I tell them why. Hey, we can't do that because court rules don't allow this. Or I tried that and this is what I didn't, So,
but as a leader, you're willing to share your reasoning.
Correct. It's never a no. Who are you to tell me what to do? Right. Like, I just don't believe in that. I believe, hey, let's go, let's have fun. And every once in a while, let's get some work done.
And I heard that terminology all the way down to, but I had the same picture in my head, which is there is a chain of command. There's a corporate ladder. So linguistically, it falls into that phraseology. But I obviously in your heart, everybody is there because they have value and they're all important. And I get that. And I love that. So you and I have a mutual friend who, interestingly, his name is Neal. He's the other Neal.
He's the other
Neal. Hey, other Neal, you're going to come on our show soon, by the way. And so Neal DeHond is, I've worked with him. I've actually known him longer than you. Back in Rochester, New York, when he did his first feature, I was running around gathering all the gear and getting his rental package together in the middle of like 10 feet of snow. It was quite the experience, but I always liked Neal and appreciated how he did things. And when we had the opportunity to work together, I jumped on it. And at that point, when it was Crooked and Narrow, which was the feature that I worked with him on, he and I also didn't know you. But that's the point where we all converged. And so I'm wondering, now that you know Neal so well, as I do, like I know how he comes to me with an idea. How does he come to you with ideas, and how do other directors like Neal come to you as a producer and say, here's a thing, I have no structure around this. What do I do? What's your response? What's that early conversation look like?
So usually I'll say first, let's set up the structure, the business structure. So it'll be setting up an LLC. Most of the time. Now it could change, but the reason I would do that first is, one, you have a landing spot for all future income. Any funding you get goes to the LLC. It doesn't go to personal, because then it affects the personal taxes.
Very muddy.
The second is the LLC provides liability protection. So, which doesn't happen right away, but you don't want to start an LLC 3 weeks into shooting. You want that as early as possible. So that's the first thing I set up. Then the second part is, okay, what do you have in place, or what do you have in mind that we can start getting agreements for? Whether it might be a location, whether it might be an actor, actress, anything that's locked, let's start getting paperwork, because, and as you know, once you start filming those 3-4 weeks, nothing, it's just very like a blur. It's very, very fast. My gosh. So it's tough. Even on the set with Dark My Light, I was responsible for doing the finances. Just to even get checks signed by Neal was sometimes tough, because, as a director, he's focused, okay, just the next scene, or whatever it is. So when I'm interrupting for business stuff, that's not on his mind. That's nothing. So it's more of, okay, let me take that in my counsel, or as a producer who knows this role. So what I try to do with him, or I did with him, and what I do with others, is let me take all that business stuff off. So you don't have to worry about it. Just focus on the creative, where you're going to shoot, what kind of lighting do you want, all of that. That's not my forte, and I don't want it to be. The same way business contracts is usually not a director's forte.
Correct.
So it's nice because we're not stepping on each other's toes. But that's the first thing I would do, is try to get all paperwork done as quickly as possible. And then the second is, okay, now what is your plan? And what's the backbone it'll take to get it. So if he says, yes, I want to hold auditions, or I want to sign this actor. Okay, well, what does that take? Now, I usually will negotiate with their manager or agent and say, hey, this is what we can offer. They always want like 10 times more.
Right.
But it's finding that middle point and seeing, okay, we won't give you this perk, but we'll give it to you in money, or we won't give you this money, we'll give it to you in perks, whatever it is, to try to get that done, so that he or any director or she, is not focused on that part of it.
Yeah.
Just focus on, where do you want the shots? How do you want the story to be? Do you want to change, fashion? I don't really do much in the fashion, getting clothes, but they usually want a particular look for a particular person. So focus on that. I can take care of all the kind of mundane, business-like tasks that need to get done.
Yeah.
Just that the creative people don't like to do it or don't want to do it.
Well, don't want to, but also, I mean, I'm painfully aware that I'm not an attorney, right? So as a producer who's produced a whole heck of a lot, I also know that if I've been given a stock contract that's been approved by the attorney, that maybe I can move forward with it.
Correct. Right.
And, I can handle a negotiation. But if there's a modification, that's something. And so even as a producer, not as the director, DP, other creative role, I might not even be able to move forward. So if you're a director or a DP or the writer or whoever is on that creative side, they really shouldn't be doing
they shouldn't. But I would say that sometimes they don't like to, because they'll be dealing with that person.
Sure.
And that kind of takes me back to my agent days. The player never really wanted to negotiate with the team directly, because, they work for that team and for that general manager. So that's what the agent will do. Hey,
if you need to be the bad guy.
If I need to be the bad guy, I'm the bad guy, because it's more of like, hey, my player wants this much more money. No, we can't give it to him. No, let's negotiate. But I negotiate with the general manager or whoever's doing that, not the player, because the player needs to focus on his practice, his reps, his workouts, whatever he has to do.
Right.
And then not get into a one-on-one negotiation session, which most of them are pretty, but it can get, firm or I don't want to say ugly, but it can get there while you're negotiating. And he doesn't want to be the actor or the director who just laid out the DP,
right,
and pummeled him in the fees, or the actor pummeled it, and then, will this actor work for this guy? So that's where the load can shift from the director or whoever position, just doing that position. And if I need to be the bad guy, I'm the bad guy.
You got the stomach for it.
I have the stomach for it. Luckily, I think my style of negotiation is never adversarial. It's more, we need to get to the same spot. How are we going to get there? You want to go down this road? I want to go down this road. Where are we going to meet so that we end up in the same spot? So I don't see it as adversarial. I think it's just like, hey, if your guy wants to do the movie, we want to do it. Let's just work it out. But there's stances where they'll say, oh, we'll think about it. Well, I know they're going to take it, or we'll say we'll think about it, and they know we really want him. Mm-hmm. But that's the game. Yep. That's the game of it. But that game is on my shoulders. It takes it away from the filmmaker, so they can focus on filmmaking. I'm getting
excited just thinking about this stuff, because it's some of my favorite part of it too.
Oh, okay.
So good on you. I like that. So now you've described setting up the LLC, running it like a business, handling all the business activities as a producer, lots of negotiations. One of the things that I think is fascinating for a lot of people, and it's, even though I'm neck deep in the industry, it's still fascinating for me. And over lunch, I told you, it's still the hardest thing to unlock is money.
Correct.
So you're going to offer an actor a certain amount of money and perks and whatever, but you got to have the money first in order to make that offer. And, independent film being what it is, seems like a terrible investment. And it can be sometimes, especially with the wrong crowd, right? And I like to think that you and I run in the right crowd.
Yeah.
But what is this activity of finding money and being a good steward of that money in this industry? Talk to me about that from your perspective.
So like you said, on paper, it's one of the worst investments you can do statistically.
Yeah.
But there's two reasons people will do it. One is they just love filming, doing filmmaking and being part of the film industry. And some of it is the perks that, okay, if I put in this money, when they have the premiere, I get the red carpet, I get the limo. No other business will do that. If you invest in a Walgreens, good for you. You'll make money, but there's no red carpet. And I'm not knocking Walgreens, great pharmacy. But it's not a glamour. industry.
Yep.
But what it is it gives you ROI, the return on investment. And you can see, okay, let's just say you open a brand new store, whatever it is. Okay, the first 4 or 5 months, I might take a loss, I might break even. Months 6, 7, 8, I'm starting to make a profit. And you can see the chart going upwards.
Yep.
In the movie industry, it's a 0 or 1. You don't make any money until you do, if you do. So one, it's the return on investment, but 2, it's the which makes it a poor. But the idea also statistically makes it a poor investment. But you get these big hits like a Blair Witch.
Yep.
You get and the dream is there that, hey, if I can make a good movie, this can turn into something because I believe in this movie. So that's always there. Now, statistically, no, but it's also very, very unique. Where else can you say I'm a filmmaker? I'm an executive producer. I'm on set. This is my job right now, is on set, making sure. Now, as you know, executive producers, some come on set, some don't.
Sure.
But when they're there, I can see my money in action. I could see this awesome car scene or this dialogue. So that's something that is very unique. So if someone wants, especially with people with money, they can invest in regular business, invest in stocks, make their 6%, 10%, whatever it is, but doesn't have the thrill of being on set or being part of a movie or seeing your name on screen, possibly for the first time. Now, if you're an executive producer like Spielberg, okay, being on screen doesn't mean much, but I'm talking about the typical independent one.
I still get excited every time my name's on screen.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
How many credits?
Exactly. It's still a thrill.
It's a high. Yeah.
Right, it is. And especially when you see it on screen, the project got completed. It's there. You see the final work and you say, okay, I see what happened with it. It's not you can't check in July, hey, did we make money? August, if we didn't start shooting, or even if we did start shooting. Yeah. Until it's out where it can make money, there's no monthly profit and loss, which a lot of business investors always want to see. But in this business, there's none. It's a 0 or 1, but that 1 could be super high. It could make a lot of money. It could get your name out there. If you want to do another one, that could pay for the next one.
Yes, for sure.
But if nothing else, hey, you produced a movie. At the end of the day, you made a movie.
Yeah, you're part of a rare breed if you can finish and distribute a movie. For sure.
Correct. Yeah. And so it's a little bit of how can I outdo my friend who's also an investor? What's one thing that I can say I did that he didn't do? A little bit of that hey, I made a movie. You might have invested in Microsoft and Apple and this and that. You might have made a couple extra dollars, but I made a movie. Yeah. So I think that's a major part of it. You have to, these investors are either twofold. They invest in studio movies, or whatever, and they'll make their money. But at the independent level, it's for the love. Hey, can we make something different? And can we make something out of nowhere and put it out there for distribution, put it out there for the people to see?
Yeah. And I think that is a surprising truth for a lot of people. And it's not necessarily, because a lot of people say, oh, it's ego then, right? But I don't know that it is ego.
No, it's not. I wouldn't say ego, because it's more of, because ego would be me being a producer is ego, just to see my name. But that's not why I do it. I don't put my name up there. I don't do it for the name. I love seeing my name, but I do it because I actually love what I'm doing.
Right.
And I think that's the, if it was ego, I think they would invest in somewhere where they make more money. That's where the ego is, you know, to be honest. Here it's, hey, let me film something that in all probability, I will lose my money. I will not see it back, but I want to take a chance on something, which is like the opposite of an ego. It's like trying to make something work.
Well, there's some people who go on $100,000 vacations. Yeah. So to put $50,000 into the pool of an independent feature, actually, and because there's probably somebody listening right now who's struggling, like, oh my God, these are big dollars. I would never invest like that. But if you've got high ticket vacations on your radar, this is an experience unlike anything else, and it lasts. It lasts a very long time.
Right. Yeah. And it's something unique. Yeah. And I believe in spending more money on experiences than tangible things.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yep.
But okay, for example, if you go visit the Grand Canyon, you take a helicopter tour, you go hiking, all awesome. But everyone can do that. But if you say I invested in this movie, I was on set, look at the photos, look at this. I brought my family on set. Maybe I got one of them as an extra. Maybe this, that. I know on set I brought my kids. They got to yell. action or cut on the seat. Like they still remember it today, you know? So
cool.
So who else can say I got that opportunity, you know, that experience? So while, it's, people might say, no, I don't see the worth in it. I think the experiences alone is worth it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't need the big money. Maybe you can contribute something else and still be involved, you know, maybe it's smaller money, maybe it's services. But if you do have money you want to invest, absolutely reach out to me.
Same here. We're running in the same circles. It's all going to end up in the same projects.
Absolutely. So just reach out to either one of us. We'll handle it well.
Yes. Right. Well, and what I like is we're also pretty transparent. And I think that's true story. And you don't know him, but other Neal does. There was a guy back in the Western New York area who was running around getting doctors, dentists, and lawyers to invest. And really, I mean, it was fraud because it was like, oh, we're gonna win Oscars and get huge returns, and so the promise was through the roof. Right. And so instead of the promise being these soft touches of these amazing moments and these lasting memories and the DVD and the premiere and the posters and all these other things that come as part of the overall wrapping of the experience, it was your Oscar moment, and it was the $10 million paychecks and like stuff that just doesn't exist.
Right. And that's a good point of having counsel. Yeah. Right away. Tame that so that there's no expectation, false expectation.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the importance of having somebody else monitoring, and mostly counsel. As an attorney, I would have gone to him and said, no, you cannot say this. Don't say it. First of all, you can say anything you want. I should rephrase. Don't say it. Yeah. You know, because I'd rather have an investor know that this is a gamble. If you make money, great, but you'll get on a poster this and that, versus saying you're going to go to the Oscars. If we go to the Oscars, everybody's happy. Sure. But the promise Oscars would be difficult. And that's even for studio movies. Not all of them make the Oscars. Not all of them make money, you know.
Well, there's a very defined way to even get in there. I mean, you've got to be in an Oscar qualifying film festival to get on the radar and go through a process that if you don't put your movie in a film festival and you go straight to distribution, you're probably not on the Oscar radar at all.
At all, yeah. And even movies that have a $20 million budget, $25 million, doesn't guarantee they're going to make money either. Right. You know, so this has to be more for the intangibles, the experiences, than the monetary reward. Yep. But you know, I think it's a very unique opportunity for potential investors. But I would also say make sure it's money that if you put it in the mindset, if I lost this all, like I still have a house, I still have this. Yeah. You know, you don't want to break the bank.
It's kind of casino money, but it's your payoff is pretty much guaranteed in those soft aspects.
Yeah, that's guaranteed 100%. And then you hope as a bonus, you know, the movie does well and you make money and you have premieres.
And if you're in enough of them over time with the right crowd, great things do start happening and you just can't really predict those. So one thing I'm curious about, and we've never talked about this, if you don't have expertise in it, just stop me. But I think you probably do, is the tax side of things. Okay. Yeah. So as an investor who comes in, higher net worth people, they have a lot of different investments happening. Sometimes you hear about wanting to deliberately lose money and playing with tax structures. I also hear a lot, and I've spent a lot of time with the New York State Film Office to know about their tax incentives, but there are incentive packages in many states. Are you experiencing any of that? What are you seeing in the tax side of it?
Oh yeah, so great question. So the movies we did in Florida, we did a tax incentive. And every state has their rules of what you need to do.
We don't have very much in Florida.
No, it was just more of you have to whatever I think it was you spend, you get a percentage of it. Okay. So we filmed in Pinellas County, I think, right? Yep. So it was a matter. So whatever we spent in Pinellas County, they gave us a percentage tax break on that, or tax refund. Yeah. New York does the same thing. Georgia, all the states do. I think California just upped their tax package.
Oh, they have to compete with the East Coast right now.
Right. Yeah. Because not a lot of them want to film there, but just because the crew costs are higher, things like that. But every state has, or even countries have their own tax rebate program. So part of location scouting, if I'm involved or someone like me involved early, is going to say, hey, if it's tied, this has the better tax break. Do we want to consider that? Now, if you need to film in the snow and Boston is the place, I can't suggest Florida. It just doesn't make sense from a movie standpoint. But hey, if you just need a coast, okay, instead of a New England coast, let's take a Florida codes, there's a tax advantage. That's something I can add to it. Now, it has to balance first the creativity and the aesthetic and look, but that's what I can at least bring to their attention, because a lot of directors won't know this. A lot of EPs, first time EPs especially, may not know this. So at least I bring it up to say, here's what the differences are if you film at different places.
Yeah.
The other thing is a personal tax break. An investor can write off this investment money because the first year is always going to be a loss because we didn't make the money. Maybe in the second year is a loss. So there's some tax breaks they can have. And then when they makes money, there's also ways to, I'm going to say, redirect the money. So it's not all coming to their personal income. It could be held somewhere else. And then as they withdraw it, they only get taxed on that amount. Things like that we can structure based on where they are in their tax strategy.
Right. Yeah. Everybody has a fact pattern.
Correct.
So you got to evaluate that for them.
Right. For personally, from a movie standpoint, there's definitely tax rebates almost anywhere nowadays because they want to compete. It's just a matter of where the best one is versus where the best location is.
Yeah. I'm a little out of date on New York, but I remember at one point, if you did, anything in the 5 boroughs, you could get 30% back below the line up to 15 million.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then the more north you went, they would start adding percentages till you got to Western New York, which was the least trafficked for films. Filming. And you could get 40%.
Right.
And so, you put $1 million in, and most directors would go, oh, so I have 1.4 million. Great.
Right.
And that's not quite the, from a producer standpoint, we go, oh no, we have 400,000 in investor payback if we do this right. And of course that's, I'm using round numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of that's above the line.
Yeah.
So let's say 30% of it's above the line, you might get 40% of your 700,000.
Correct.
But still, that's real deal money.
It's money. It's straight check. So it's not even in perks or future or anything. Yeah. It's a check written out to the LLC.
Right.
So
which I look at as risk mitigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You're getting this much back when you film a movie. So at a minimum, like you said, we'll just use the round number of $1 million, but you get 40% back. Okay. It's really I'm risking 600,000.
Correct.
In a way, easy math. So then someone might be easier to swallow that, saying, okay, we're going to get $1 million product for $600,000.
Right. Suddenly it feels a little bit like a deal, a little bit closer to a better potential return.
Correct.
And then of course your write-off still, on day one is still $100,000 if you put 100,000 in, even if you're expecting 40,000 back.
Correct.
And that's a very big deal when it comes to having less acid reflux on your way into an opportunity.
Right. So and absolutely. And that's what I would point out to investors is you won't, whatever you invest, you do get some of it back guaranteed. Yeah. Obviously if you follow the rules and all that, but it's guaranteed you'll get this much back. And like you said, maybe it might be an easier pill for them to swallow.
Yeah.
Where they get the full experience with 40% less risk.
Right. Right. And not too many places have that. There's a lot of different tax strategies out there for different things. And there are different rebates that float around, but this is a pretty notable one. Do you know if Section 181 still exists? Do you remember that?
I do. I just don't know. I would have to look it up.
I would have to look it up too. So there was, for those listening, during the Obama era, and I really have always considered this him thanking Hollywood for getting him elected.
Right.
In year one, he gets Section 181 put out there, which was written by the famed Hal Corky Kessler, who I hung out with at Sundance. So it makes me sound very fancy. But basically it was you get to write off passive income invested in a feature or a TV show or any large production in the same year. So you could just, put $1 million into a movie knowing that it's a day one write-off of $1 million. You're not amortizing it over the years. It is just what it is. And what a gift to be able to be like, Spielberg SKG or DreamWorks SKG, Spielberg, Katz and Geffen. Those three guys are going to go, great. So I'm going to take $500 million here and $500 million there and write it all off and put it into anchor films that are going to go make me $1 trillion.
Right. But they get that write-off. Yeah. And I do that with other businesses. So outside the film or from my law hat.
Yes.
Same thing. Hey, I tell clients who have a little higher net worth, you need a tax break this year? If you do, I know where you're going to lose that money. you'll get it back. It won't be right away, but you can take your tax breaks now.
Right.
And then when you get it back, we can structure in a way where it's not all hit at taxable at once.
Yeah.
You know, that $1 million might come in chunks. So you get just pieces of it, tax back. So, you know, there's a lot of creativity that can be done. Just like when you film a movie, creativity, they're same way in the legal world and the tax world and the paperwork world, all that.
But I like how you smile through that too, because you're enjoying the creativity on the business side. I love it too. There's something kind of magical about having a puzzle where the pieces, you're actually cutting the pieces to put them together yourself.
Yeah, right.
You know, and then you end up with a cool picture when you're done, but you're an artist of your own right.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know which is the right brain or left brain, but I think the right brain is more logical.
Yeah. I'll buy whatever you're selling.
Yeah. If I'm wrong, we'll fix it in post, you know?
God, no.
Yeah. It's the right brain, you know, fix that. Right brain, I think, is more logical. The left is more creativity, or maybe the other way around. But the one thing I didn't mention is, you know, I also DJ and had my own entertainment company.
What?
Yeah. So
how did I miss this?
You know, I don't know. It's there's so many things, right? It's easy to miss. But the reason I say that is that was my creativity side coming out. Cool. You know, people golf on weekends, this and that. I would MC and DJ weddings, things like that. But that was to me like, okay, I'm going to take these two songs and mash it up or connect them somehow the way I like to make the crowd move. And that's the creativity in me coming out. Like I said, there's creativity on a film, but I also know what I don't know.
Right.
So sometimes I'll see, hey, we're filming it this way. And like this last movie I did, I said, well, why don't we shoot it this way? One, it just kind of has more of a powerful impact. Mm-hmm. And two, you don't have to flip the scenes where you shoot this way, set up the camera. So we save a lot of time with the camera setup. So that's where the creativity will come in. Or, hey, we don't have a place to shoot. Well, okay, let's make this place look like this.
Right.
You know, so there's a little bit of creativity. And then they're like, do you want to be a director? And I'm like, no, I know what they do. It's too much, you know, like,
it's a different animal.
It's an art form, you know, people go to school for it and the other Neal's a professor of it, you know? And so it's not I don't think someone can just go in and be like, yeah, I can direct this next movie. It's an art form to itself. And I respect that, you know, but there's still always some creativity in a producer or someone like me where I'm like, okay, I deal with contracts all day. Yeah. But the other side of the brain wants to do that little bit of creativity, you know? So that was my outlet, but you're right. It's about solving the puzzles. It's about how do I get from point A to point B, because we have to get to point B.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, now let's plot the perfect or the best route. We may not work.
Yep.
But at least I know where I need to be. So like you said, it's a great puzzle. Yeah. You know, and it's usually nice when I know what the puzzle's supposed to look like. That doesn't happen always.
Right.
I'm usually putting away a puzzle and like, what's the end goal? Like, what am I trying to solve here? You know, I'm just putting pieces together. But when you have the end goal, it's nice because it's like, okay, I can move this piece to this and this to this, and I still get
the picture.
I still get to where I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. When I got my degree in philosophy, there was a practice called writing an exegesis. And an exegesis is basically taking a snippet from somebody else's work and digging deep into that snippet, but it's really mining into what they said. You don't get to have any creativity of your own in the sense like, this is what I believe.
Right.
It's you're figuring out what they believed, maybe their peers believed, maybe future philosophers and how they expounded on it, but you don't get to have your own ideas. And I would complain. There's no creativity. There's no, and it's like, no, actually, there was such beauty in that structure that you could be brilliantly creative in how you craft an argument around what other people were talking about.
Right.
And it took some maturity that I didn't have at that time to kind of start unveiling how that is. And of course, we talked earlier about the project management process is, a euphemism for the production process,
right?
And so you're being wildly creative within a semi-defined process. And the end goal is a feature film product or a TV show or whatever you're creating. And I just love how attuned you are to how creative you can be within the lines.
Yes, definitely. Right. You have to stay within the lines, but it's kind of hypocritical when we say you stay within the lines, but I have an out of the box thinking.
Right. No, I get it.
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds weird to say, but it's more of, okay, we need to get from here to here. This is how it's normally done. It's not going to work this time. What do we how do we shift the paradigm? How do we shift our perspective on it so that we still get there?
Yeah.
We didn't violate any rules or any laws or cheat anybody, fraud anybody, but we need to get from point A to point B. It just won't work the traditional way, the standard way. We need to think of something else.
Yeah, I've got a picture in my head of, two very wide lines on a road, and those are the law.
Yeah.
And then there's some thinner lines that you could choose to stay within, which is the way we've always done it.
Right.
And then you get to color outside of the lines and be outside of the box as needed, provided you don't cross over the law lines.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. And I always tell my clients, I said, I never cross the line. I might come right up to it.
Sure.
And I might peer over the other side, but I don't cross it because I don't want to put anybody in trouble. But I live in that gray. Sometimes you have to live in the gray, and a funny thing, when I was in law school, we would be discussing the law and my friend would come up to me and say, can you do this? Can you do A, B, and C? And the first question I would ask is, are you asking, can it be done? Or are you allowed to do it? Because those are two different things. Can it be done? Yeah, we can do A, B, and C. Are you allowed to do it? Maybe, maybe not.
Sure.
But those are different questions. So when even clients come up to me now and say, can we do this? It's like, can and are we allowed to are two different.
Sure.
You can do it, but if you're not allowed to, I'm not going to be part of it. I'll get you to the edge.
Yep.
But I won't cross the line, but.
Well, and I know some conservative about their own behavior, not politically, is listening to this going, well, you don't want to be on the edge because that's dangerous. Well, maybe it's dangerous for you, but the lines were drawn by law for a purpose, and that edge exists. And if you're up to the edge, you're still within the law. Yeah. That's a beautiful reality because now we know where the edge is.
Right. Exactly. And that's the gray area.
Yeah.
And I tell clients when I'm fighting for you, I'm okay staying in that gray area because I need to fight everything I have.
Yes.
Use my entire, if I just stay within that main part, well, then I'm not your best representative, because I'm just saying, this is how it's always done. You have to do it the same way. And no, laws change because of people who say, no, this is not how we're going to do it anymore.
Right.
These cases,
let's challenge the norm. Here we go.
Yeah. And then that's how you broaden that law highway lane, like you were talking about. So, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing even in filmmaking, right? Yeah. Hey, we need to shoot it this way. Well, why? If we can't do it this way, let's now think outside the box for a second. Don't shoot this angle. Let's shoot this angle. You need it at nighttime, but we can only shoot in the day. All right. Well, something simple as black out the window.
Sure.
Make it look
day
nice,
for night. Here we
go. So it's just creativity, creative solutions. Mm-hmm. But that also works in the law world and also works in the film world. It almost works in anything. Sometimes you need creative solutions because you're just hitting a roadblock in the traditional way.
Yeah. Speaking of creative solutions, are you following Angel Studios at all?
I'm not yet. No.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to tune you into something. You got to look at this business model. This is crazy. So I don't have the whole story on who originated it. And Mike Rowe has a great podcast interviewing the guys who actually founded it. But Angel Studios at its simplest is a faith-based film network where guys like you and me, we could write a script. We could do a spec trailer. We could do something and submit it to them. Okay. And they will, and I don't know at what level they'll just take anybody's stuff, but I'm pretty sure you can submit maybe a small submission fee, but then they'll put it out to their subscribers in some kind of submission form so that the subscribers could all vote on whether they think it's something that should be pursued. Oh, wow. So instead of going and making something on spec, you can make a smaller spec proof of concept, submit it to them, and then they'll have 5,000 people that they call in the guild. Now, like you and I could right now go spend like $20 a month to get access to their movies in their streaming platform. Okay. And then we're in the guild and we might get something in the mail. We might get an email saying, hey, could you review this and give us your thoughts? Right. And they're basically polling the audience saying, is this worth pursuing? Right. And they might give the director feedback and say, it's almost worth pursuing, but you got to tweak this. They might say it's worth pursuing and we're going to give you $20 million to do your movie. They might say, sorry, better luck next time. But it's all based on consumer data voting on what they're paying to vote for. And at some level, you get like 2 movie tickets for the theatrical premieres of every one of their movies when you're paying a certain amount. It's not much. It's like $20-$30 per month to be in the guild, getting the streaming and getting 2 movie tickets for every one of their movies. And they're blowing up. So I'm watching this as a business model going, why didn't anybody think of this sooner? Right. But it's what a fascinating change in film finance and distribution scares me. Yeah. Always has. Right. Correct. Because what if you make it and nobody wants it?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, that's people think, oh, you made a movie. That's it. You're going to be millionaires. But no, there's a second side of it.
Right.
The distribution of it is as equal, or if not more important than actually filming it, because, okay, now that you filmed it, now what? What are you doing?
Every once in a while, I'll hear of somebody getting a distribution deal or partnership before they roll camera. Have you ever run into that?
That's I think the new norm or new direction I would recommend for filmmakers, is that put in the distribution, advertising and marketing budget upfront into the movie making, because that's just, like I said, just as important.
Yeah.
Because so I think what I've been recommending is to put that in, like, so if you have a budget of 300,000 movie you want to do, maybe make it 400,000 just to make easy numbers. So that 100,000 you don't touch for production, but you have it built in now for the end, or maybe it's 50,000, whatever it is you need, but you have it built in for the distribution, advertising, marketing, the merchandise, all that stuff is already there. So now, when you're completed the movie and as it's done, you're not saying, okay, now let's look at the next step. That's the next step was already built in.
Right.
So that's what I would recommend to the young filmmakers is budget that. And that's a lot of stuff that young filmmakers or any age filmmaker actually doesn't always consider,
right.
Because they're more like, I want to get this movie perfect. I want these dialogues. I want these shots. And that's good. Do that. But then you also need somebody like a producer or production counsel or someone else to say, hey, let's also do this. Put this up front so that, and that goes back to the original question before, is having production counsel and producer hat is, I know what's coming down 5 steps. Let's avoid it now, or let's do something now to lessen that fee. So same thing I would tell filmmakers, hey, get that budget now. Because if someone's investing, and it's easy for me to say I know, but let's say if they're investing 400,000, it might be just as easy to get 500,000 up front, rather than saying, hey, we finished it. A year from now, I need another 100,000, because you don't know what position they're in, whether they're interested, what if they don't like the movie. For various reasons, you may not ever get that 100,000.
Yeah.
But if you get it up front, when you're kind of in the honeymoon phase with investors and they're all excited, it'll go a long way at the end.
Yeah, it really will.
Yeah.
I've heard it said that the first 10% of the investment pool is the hardest to raise.
Yeah. That's always.
And so, it, between 400 and 500,000, 40 to 50 is a very small jump to say I've landed my first 10%.
Right.
So aiming for 500,000 out the gate instead of 400,000 seems like a worthy pursuit. Because if you can get yourself 40 or 50,000, and then hopefully the other dominoes fall in your favor. Yeah, it's not that big a leap.
No, it's not. And, and there's a lot of FOMO and a lot of, oh, you have an investor, it must be okay.
Right.
So getting that first one is always the toughest. But once you do, and every filmmaker kind of knows this process, but for those who don't, the first 40, 50, you might be using now to pay for the line producer to create the budget, or casting director to see what cast you can get, because they cost money, but now you maybe get a casting director who gets this actor who investors say, oh, he's in it, then it must be good. I will invest.
Yep.
So it's kind of a domino effect. Like you said, the first one's hard, but I wouldn't stop at the production cost. I would add in reasonable marketing, distribution, and advertising money, because it's easy to get then in the honeymoon phase.
I had one of my early films completely fall apart, never make it to production because I didn't have that order.
Okay.
So, you start getting investment money and we were just pooling, right? And not really doing anything because everything was sweat equity on producers' parts. And so in that case, we were starting to get in actors willing to attach, so some verbals, because the guy who wrote it was reasonably famous and they liked him.
Gotcha.
Right. Okay. And so it was a small commitment because, we could have filmed the whole thing in 18 days.
Okay.
Cool location. So that had some cool factor. But really, I had already run the budget. I did the line producer job. I knew what the budget was, 400 all day.
Right.
Advertising, you were spot on, by the way. And this is an older story, but we had 100,000 for advertising.
Okay. Right.
But we didn't have a line producer separate from us to keep us in check.
Oh, I see.
And so my co-producer on that was convinced that it should be 600,000. So I caved, right? I said, fine, let's aim for 600. Within a week, he had decided that this was going to also cover his retirement. He was a little older than I am. And so we really needed a $1.2 million budget so that we could have extremely inflated paydays.
Right. Okay.
And I'm like, well, hold on, but nobody will ever see this. We won't get to that number. And, we'll get to that number. And we went back and forth. And it's the writer who is also going to be the director kind of caught wind of all of that. And I said, Jeff, I'm not comfortable with this. And he goes, not comfortable with it. I'm killing the deal.
Right.
And he rightly killed the deal because we just didn't have early funds pointed towards a casting director who would start taking those people who were saying yes and booking them.
Yeah.
So we couldn't prove that they were willingly attaching. And then we also had the failure that we didn't have a line producer keeping it honest. Right. And not that we were being dishonest. We would have told, you would have seen there was a budget that we had there that had just hilarious producer fees. Like some of the dumbest stuff I've seen ever. Right. But not taking those early funds and applying them the way you just described was a trap.
Yeah, no, it's going to catch up. It's going to catch up, and there's two ways to approach the film with a budget is, let's say you have 200,000, you could say, okay, let's make the best movie, get the best cast we can for 200,000. Or you could say, let's take that 200,000, get the best cast.
Right.
Once we have this A list, B list, whatever the 200,000 buys, now let's parlay that for the next investment.
Right.
So you can either complete it at 200,000, and there's no wrong or right, it's just more of where you want this project to go. You can complete it for 200,000 and make the best you can. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of people do it. Or you can parlay it.
Yep.
Now, obviously, the risk of parlaying is, do you get more because you've already committed to these actors? But most likely, if they're these good actors, you'll find investors. Yep. So that's what I would suggest. One of the two.
Right.
Just depending on where you are as far as, hey, I want to make a $200,000 movie, or I want to parlay the 200 into $1 million. Can I handle $1 million movie? Now, there are some people who can say, I don't want to handle $1 million movie, where I would come in and say, fine, you want to be just a director, you want to be just this DP, do that. I'll handle the money. I'll handle the finances. I'll handle everything else that comes with it. Just focus on the same movie you were doing. But, you want that helicopter scene? Maybe we can get it, kind of thing, right?
Yes.
So it's just more of focus on the creative, focus on that. And then I will come in and help with all the, business side of it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting there going, gee, I have a film in me, you really need to call Neal.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this go so well working with him on multiple films now. You really owe it to yourself to learn more about Neal and his law firm and his producing practice. Have you separated those websites, or is all one website?
I don't have a producing website. It's just a law website right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what's the website?
Sampatlaw.com.
Oh, I thought so. Okay.
Yeah, SAMPATLAW.com.
All right. So now you know how to find them. Just blow them up. Go find Neal.
Yeah.
Tell him you've got a dream script and you've already got your first $100,000. You better actually have it if you say that. But I totally trust you on all of this stuff.
No,
so
absolutely.
What's your hot take on the industry? What's going on in the industry where you're like, I have a burning story to tell?
I don't know if I have any burning stories. One, I might be privileged or I can't share them, but the industry is in flux right now.
Yeah.
It's just, and we talked about it. I think I believe there's some creativity dip. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of remakes, a lot of redos by big budget studios.
Yep.
I think the independent one, it has a little more struggle now to get it out there because, big budget studios just kind of take over the marketing and advertise. But I think a glimpse of hope is this past Oscars was a lot of independent movies, non-studio movies, winning awards.
Yeah.
And I think that shows, hey, it's still possible. You just need a good story. Yeah. Write a good story or have a good story and or find a good story and you want to invest in it. I think it can happen. I think it's a little harder. Mm-hmm. It's tougher. Because studios and all will want the remakes, the sequels. It's been already proven it works. Let's just do it again for this new generation. But I think if you have the one good enough and you do it properly, you can't just film it in your basement type of thing. Do it properly with the right crew, with the right DP, with the right producers, all that. The one thing I've noticed is, okay, if it's good, it'll be found. It may not be distributed, but the Oscars found some of these movies that weren't widely distributed. but they were found. And I'm not saying everything has to be Oscar worthy, just good enough that people say this was a really good movie.
Yeah.
So while it's being tougher to get into the theaters, I would say don't discourage yourself from making what you want to make, investing what you want to invest, if it's a good story.
Yeah.
So I would say pick good stories right now that maybe aren't done, or maybe they were done in the 80s and it needs to be redone, but not a remake, not a redo or something like that, but a theme from that, hey, this generation might like, this new one that are in college now, then didn't understand it. Or if I say, hey, that was back in the 80s, but when they see it on theater, they'll be like, oh, I get it. It's a good story, but it's just not a remake. It's not a redo. It's a brand new take on maybe a similar subject, but just something new and different. And I think the creativity is unleashed right now because of Instagram, TikTok. Like anyone on their camera, on their phone has a camera, can film something funny, film something good, and just keep doing that if you're doing that, because it'll get noticed. Or if it doesn't get noticed, send it to people who can get it noticed. Because, back, I'll date ourselves, back in the 80s, you had the big camera here. Not everyone had it. It was on VHS tapes. Editing was an issue. Now kids film it on their phone, edit it on their phone, publish it, on the social media on their phone.
It's amazing how readily accessible it is.
And it's within 10 minutes, I know. Right? So it can be done. Just don't stop the creative juices. Keep doing the creative juices. The rest, find people like Josh and myself to help with the business side and all that. But do the creative.
All right. I love it. What are your next 3 chess moves? I know you've got a lot of irons in the fire. What does 2025's moves for you look like?
Well, if I tell you my chess moves, I'm giving away the game plan, right? But
all right.
Okay,
the public side of it. The public side of it.
I got you. No, so working on funding for a script I have with my producing partner Zora.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a good script. We're just looking at funding for it. We have a couple reality series things where we're kind of still in the funding portion of that. Maybe we can make it work, maybe we can't, but it's a different kind of reality show. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a little bit like a Top Chef.
Okay.
Meets Big Brother.
Oh, all right.
It's unique. It's unique. So there's challenges, prizes every week, yet more of a Big Brother style of just watching people.
I dig it.
I'm trying to think what else. Still have my law practice that I'm growing. Kind of took the next step to kind of put it to the next level of growing, because now we're doing a lot of wills and trusts.
Okay.
A lot of estate planning, because I've noticed everyone needs one. And it doesn't go away. It's not like other businesses where immigration can take a law based on presidential administrations, or business laws can change or things like that, but everyone needs a will.
Yep.
And so focusing a little bit on growing that to get that to kind of more of a cruise control. So I can focus more on the film and TV, stuff like that.
I like that.
But also just taking emails, calls for scripts, seeing what we can do.
So you'll take submissions?
I'll take submissions if I can't always guarantee a response, or I can't guarantee a success.
Okay, you'll kind of take submissions.
Right. But it's more of we're at the phase we're ready to film.
Yeah.
Not what do you think of my script?
Right. And that I've had to be pretty clear with people about that too, because there was a time period where I was getting 3 to 5 submissions a week, and I'm like, how did I get on your list?
Yes, correct. Right.
Yes, I own a production company, but
yeah, I've gotten unsolicited calls, which are. I'll say are kind of cool, because they're like, oh, they found me. But it's like, okay, but I also have all this stuff.
Thank you. Right.
And I read a couple, and I'm like, okay, it's just not ready yet. It's too, either formulaic. It doesn't hold me. One of the best advice I got for a TV script that I was working on, not that I was writing it, but we had a writer, was when you're done, and I'll say this for all the writers out there, is give me something to turn the page.
Yeah.
I need something. So it was an episodic episode, and the episode ended. It was great. And he even said, it's a great episode. Well, why do I want to tune into episode 2?
Right.
Like, what do you have for me? And that's when it clicked, like, okay, you need to keep the audience involved. You need to keep them saying, I need to come back for this.
Yeah.
So for the submissions, I'm more at the stage of, hey, we got it. We like this script. We're thinking of producing it. we either got this much money, we need more, or we just want to try to raise this much money.
Yeah.
My producer partner, she's good at raising money, but it also depends on, okay, who do you have any letters of intent? Where are you? If you have letters of intent, it goes a long way. If you don't, can we get letters of intent? Who do you have in mind? How close are you to getting them? Because they could say, I have George Clooney. But okay, well, that doesn't mean we get him. He's a $25 million thing. Like, what's your budget? Or Denzel Washington, or any of these A-listers. Great, I would love to have him in my movie too, but you better have some budget for it. Or a letter of intent that because you know him personally, he's your neighbor.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Something. Get it written down on their letterhead.
Right. Or get me and I'll get the letter of intent, but make sure, we're at that stage. But so I'm always looking for new projects, looking for new stuff to do. I don't think I'm at the stage where I have too much, because when you love it, too much is always good. Yeah. But if it gets too much, I'll come back and I'll tell you, hey, take my website off.
Fair. Yeah, we'll scrub it. Yeah. True story, and I'll tell it off camera at some point. But there was one day I was filming and I had to run somewhere, and I knock into this guy in a really nice suit, and I actually threw him into a wall and he collapsed to the ground, and I pick him up and I go, he looks really familiar, and he's fine, and he's telling me to go get my shot, and I look over my shoulder, I'm like, I just clobbered George Clooney.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just knocked him right over.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, you owe him a spot in one of your movies.
I do. Right? Yeah. You know what? Just for you, George. I owe you. You can act in any one of my works. No problem.
Right. We'll give him crafty access to everything. Right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. You can be an executive producer on it. It's fine. It's fine. I'll give you the credit. Not a problem.
Right. Single card, everything.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this has been a hilariously fun opportunity. I'm so glad you flew in for this.
Thank you for this opportunity.
All right. Sampat Law.
Right. SampatLaw.com.
Do you have a jingle?
No, but if anybody out there is creative, get one for me. Maybe barter some services,
All right. Well, we won't play the jingle, but we will remind you that Bootstrapped Unicorns is on the regular, helping you meet new people who can help you on your entrepreneurial journey. I know conversations like this always lift me up and give me a new idea that I can leverage for my business. I hope you're in the same place. Go find us on all the social media. Are you on any socials?
I'm on Instagram, and all my socials are at Neal J Sampat.
Awesome. All right,
and spelled Neal, just so.
Got it. Right. No IA.
Right.
Yep. Okay. So go find Neal, stalk him, follow him. Absolutely. You never know what's coming up there. And until next time, let me just remind you to get back to work.